Welcome or welcome back to Afropean Monica. So I am mixed race and Polish, and people to this day often ask me if Poland is racist. From my perspective, of course. I know I have spoken about this previously every now and again, but today I want to expand and I want to address the Poland of today. I visit Poland on a regular basis. I no longer live there. I live in London, UK. I've lived here for the past 2 decades, but I do spend a lot of time in Poland, approximately 6 weeks per year, I would say. And I have just recently come back from Poland. Before I get to that, I just want to say, whenever I talk to Americans or Africans as well, they put us in this box, Europeans, right? They often would say things like, Europe is this or Europe is that. Americans do it a lot, but Africans often do the same thing. And it's funny because, Africans don't like when it's done to them. We've all heard this correction, which is Africa is not a country. Yes, of course, we know Africa is a continent, 54 countries, right? But it is very similar with Europe. Europe is a continent, and there are individual countries within Europe. You all know that, but the way people have conversations about Europe a lot of the times is as if we are all one people. Europe is a continent. Let's just remember this. And in this video, I am going to address one country specifically, which is Poland, which is in Europe, Central Europe. So if you watch this channel, you already know that I grew up in Poland. I want to talk about what it means to be mixed race and Polish in terms of having these two identities, as well as answer the question whether or not Poland is racist. Again, I think it's a good time to talk about this because of what is happening around Europe. We are seeing the general tightening around migration across the continent, and funny enough, Poland is very often in the center of these conversations. I have also been considering relocating to Poland, so I've been thinking about these things a lot and trying to figure out whether that's the right move for me or not. I did not leave Poland because of racism or anything like that, but part of the reason why I left Poland was I was just tired of not being able to blend in, which you cannot when you look like me, right? Being mixed race and Polish, you will definitely stand out in a country like Poland, which is like 98% Caucasian. I want this video to address the Poland of today. However, to do that, I kind of have to go back a little bit, maybe to 2015, when the Law and Order party took over in Poland. They are very much a right-wing party. Around that time, I started hearing things like, Poland is becoming a lot more racist. Anyway, this video is not about headlines. It is pretty much about my own personal experience when I am there. But I kind of want to tell you why I started paying more attention. And that's partly because I started hearing things from people I trust. I started hearing things like, oh, Poland has become a lot more racist. I don't suggest that you come back here right now and all that, right? So I started observing because I really did consider relocating back to Poland from the UK at some point. And I do have to highlight once again, like, Poland is my country. I grew up there. I speak the language. I move confidently through Poland. I don't ask anybody's permission to be there or anything like that. So I am speaking from that perspective, right? I just want to share with you how I experience Poland as a country. Polish people are definitely more reserved, more direct than many other nations, right? So if you are coming from, let's say, Latin America or some other places, like even in Africa, where people are a lot more warm, a lot more open from the get-go, Poland isn't like that. Poland isn't like that. Polish people are a lot more reserved. Like, it takes time for them to open up. What I'm trying to say is it's really important to understand the country. Otherwise, you may feel you are being treated unfairly based on, let's say, your skin color. I'm going to give you a little example which I hope illustrates what I'm trying to talk about a little bit more when it comes to context. I was in Poland in December and I wanted to buy shoes, winter shoes for myself. So I went to a store and I noticed that one of the shop assistants, she did see me, but she kind of hesitated. It didn't feel like she was going to approach me. So then I spoke to her. I was like, oh, I need your help. Can you please do this and that, right? And I said it in Polish. Immediately she came, she was okay. She wasn't like, super warm or anything like that, but she was efficient. She was very helpful. She did what I needed her to do. I know there are people like that in my circle who immediately would be like, she must be racist because she's hesitating to approach me. Why is she not coming? And the thing is, she may have hesitated because she wasn't sure whether I spoke Polish, right? And maybe she wasn't very confident in English, which is quite common, really. I mean, Poland is quite good these days especially places like Krakow or Warsaw, but for instance, Szczecin, that's near the German border. So, many people speak German on that side and are able to communicate in German a lot easier than in English, So I'm not sure whether or not she hesitated because of that or whether it was something else. But what I'm trying to say is that context matters. I guess what I'm trying to do through my videos a lot of the times is show people that they shouldn't jump into conclusions too quickly. And of course, Poland isn't perfect, right? So let's just make that clear. Poland is 98% Caucasian. I mean, that's neither here nor there, but I'm just saying that to say that they are not very used to seeing certain kinds of people, although that has changed significantly, especially in like larger cities. But generally, you will be stared at. It's usually not with hostility, though. It's just curiosity. And that was one of the small reasons why I decided to move to the UK. I just felt like in London, you can just blend in and people don't stare at you. You can just go places and nobody cares to, spend more time assessing you than another person. You know what I mean? I know that being stared at can be annoying, especially if you've never had that before, but it's not hostility. For the most part, it's not hostility, it's just curiosity. Polish people travel a lot, but especially if you go to smaller towns, they will pay you a lot more attention that you may wish to receive. That's that. Another thing is Polish people are very blunt by nature. Sometimes I'm listening to it now, having lived in the UK for like 20 years, which we all know British people are very polite generally by nature. I'm not even going to address whether it's honest or not. That's not the point. The point is there is a different culture when it comes to that. Polish people are very direct, they are very blunt, they are very honest, which I really love, but they are very blunt. So sometimes, when they say things, it may come across as, why do you think it's okay to say this, right? Another thing is, coming back to being mixed race and Polish, I want to say that they are a lot less versed in having these diversity conversations. Again, it's a very homogeneous society, but I'm just remembering something that happened some time ago. It must have been before 2015. There was some kind of awakening to having those diversity conversations in Poland for whatever reason, trying super hard to be correct and not say the wrong thing. I was there with a family member at the time, and the person is black, and I lost him. I could not find him, so I'm walking around the town, a city, asking people, have you seen a tall black man? And one woman, blue eyes, blonde hair, she tells me, oh, you cannot say black. It's not correct. Like, you have to say colored. It just made me laugh. I didn't actually say anything to her. I just laughed inside. I'm like, wow. You think you know things, right? My focus at the time was on finding the person because I was concerned he didn't speak Polish, and long story. But so at that time there was some kind of awakening. But what's really funny, the Polishness came through even in that, because here I am, mixed race, black and white, right? And she is telling me how I am supposed to address my people. That's just the Polish way, the direct way of speaking, and on top of it, the lack of understanding of how to actually have these conversations not to offend. So yes, that's what I'm going to say. I do not experience Poland as a racist country. I do recognize certain things that are just like, that can be off-putting to somebody who's not from there, who doesn't understand the people, the history. There's one topic that is practically impossible to avoid when talking about Poland and racism, and that is migration. Poland has been accused by Western Europe especially of being biased towards Ukrainian refugees, while at the same time completely ignoring the needs of migrants from places like Africa.
Christian from neighboring Ukraine. So are migrants okay so long as they're not Muslim? Well, to answer that, we're joined by Polish MP Dominik Tarczynski from the ruling Law and Justice Party.
How many refugees has Poland taken?
0.
Jean-Claude Juncker, the Commission President, says that you're racist.
We need to consider the context. One, our neighbor had been attacked by Russia. That's our responsibility as a neighboring country, right? Then, if you contrast it with, let's say, the Middle East or Africa, it's difficult to talk about it because I do realize that those people don't even know very often what they are getting themselves into. They are the victims, right? Many of them are economic migrants, trying to escape poverty, which again is very painful. It's just irresponsible to even assume that Europe can absorb all the human suffering. And we have seen the results of trying to do that. We already are seeing the results in Germany, Sweden. But another thing I want to talk about is culture, language, just the ability to integrate the people who come into the country. Of course, it's a lot easier for Poland to say yes to a Ukrainian refugee. It is a lot easier to integrate a Ukrainian migrant than it is to integrate somebody who comes from the Middle East with a totally different background. Language is such a big deal, for instance. I used to have a friend from Slovakia, and we did a test. So she spoke Slovak and I spoke Polish. And we were able to communicate with some gaps in the understanding, of course, but generally we were able to have a conversation while she was speaking her language and I was speaking mine. So what I'm saying is, it is so much easier to integrate someone like that, get them to work, get them to go to school, have them live amongst you if they speak your language. And yes, they don't necessarily speak our language, Ukrainians, right? But Polish-Ukrainian conversation can actually be had surprisingly efficiently. I don't believe in migration without integration. It's bound to cause problems, and that's exactly what we are seeing in Europe. So Poland says no to that. As much as it's really painful to watch the people suffer, it's just not black or white, this situation. It's not just, Ukrainians are white, so they are welcome, and then people from the Middle East or from Africa, they are brown and black, so no, they can't come. It's not that straightforward. And let me give you a personal example again. Like, my father came to Poland back in the 80s to study. He met my mother, my Polish mother, and that's how I came to be, right? And I have gone through a lot of things in the past 5 to 7 years, I would say. And I've seen a lot of things. I have grown. I spent a lot of time in Africa. I was traveling there consistently, like for the past 5 years. My view on migration today is very different than what it was like 5 years ago even. 5 years ago, I would celebrate it without any critical assessment, I guess, of it. Right now, my view on it is very different because of the things that I have gone through personally. And I can tell you that migration often does not work out the way it is designed or the way people hope for it to work out. So for instance, my father, right, he came to Poland, they were together, then there was me, there was my sister. He could not integrate for whatever reason. He says that it's because, so the official story is that his health did not allow him to stay in Poland. Whatever the case may be, I do think it's a lot more complex than that. But the point is, I grew up without a father. And it did affect me in so many ways. I've been thinking about it a lot, especially like in the past 5 years, 6 years. I've gone through some things in my own personal life that made me think about that a little bit more. And I can tell you, that's a problem for a country, that's a problem for an individual like myself. Yes, he can say it's health or this or that, and or not being able to integrate, maybe he wasn't able to get a job or whatever. But the thing is, it's not easy. And I see a lot of mixed race people. Right now I'm specifically talking about the mix that includes an African and a European parent, right? Many of us mixed race Europeans grow up without fathers, unfortunately. Not all. Some couples are able to make it, but most don't. And it's a problem. That shows you how this type of migration can easily backfire. I could talk about it forever, really, because I have so many different examples that I actually would like to share with you. I'm not sure if you're interested in that or not, but even from my own personal life, I don't think it's always a matter of being black or white or whatever. I don't think it's always that. I think a lot of the times it's just the difference of cultures. Migration doesn't always work out. My attitude towards mixing or migration has changed over the years. The last 5 years, I feel like I have grown. I'm a lot more critical when it comes to this, and for good reasons that I can definitely discuss with you if you'd like, but for now I'm just going to leave it there. So what I'm trying to say is that I wouldn't say that Poland is racist because they allow Ukrainians, they don't allow people from the Middle East or from Africa into their country as easily. It's not black and white. You have to consider the context, aside from the fact that much of that migration is illegal. It's a very sensitive one because people suffer. Just to conclude this part, you have to consider integration. And I don't think it makes a country racist. I feel like you cannot really understand modern Poland without acknowledging a history. For a long period of time, I think 123 years, Poland didn't exist as an independent country. There was a time it was partitioned by Russia, Prussia, Austria. One of the things that you cannot forget is the Second World War and the fact that Poland was occupied by both Nazi Germany at some point and the Soviet Union. My grandma lived through that war. She was a child when it broke out. So these are the conversations that we had in our homes. Polish history is so much more complex than most people know. There was a time when it was illegal to speak Polish. For instance, in the Soviet-occupied Poland, Russian became the language of administration and education. And I want to show you something personal. My grandmother can still speak Russian, not because she chose to speak it, but because she was forced to learn it. So the other day, let me just give you some context. The other day, I wanted to show her how AI works. I picked an excerpt from somewhere and I pasted it in ChatGPT and I was like, translate to Russian to show her how smart artificial intelligence is, right? For her to understand like, wow, this is crazy. So, translate this to Russian. Przetłumacz na rosyjski. Wow. Babcia, dobrze przetłumaczyło?
Я wiem.
No to przeczytaj.
Вот перевод на русский язык. Ну, я только что открыл для себя
Wow.
кое-что. Я показывал бабушке, на что способом искусственный интеллект, no. I что nie wiernucie.
Niesamowite, że ty nadal czytasz po rosyjsku.
No, czytam.
Wow. Sama jesteś
Chociaż
zaskoczona?
przeczytam i nie wszystkie wyrazy jeszcze rozumiem, chociaż przeczytam go,
Ale
już pozapominałam.
Ale sama jesteś zaskoczona też? Też
No, jestem zaskoczona, że jeszcze pamiętam prawie wszystkie.
No bo oni was uczyli rosyjskiego w wojnie, tak? Jak wojna była?
Zaraz po wojnie było, no, po wojnie nie.
Po wojnie,
Po wojnie, bo w wojnie też. Co tam chodziło w wojnie? Trochę po polsku, któryś tam miesiąc, później przyszli ruskie, to po rusku, przyszli Niemcy, to po niemiecku.
O matko.
No.
Ale niemiecki jeszcze pamiętasz? Nie. Czy pamiętasz? Mało. Ruski bardziej.
Ruski bardziej.
Ruski bardziej.
No.
Niesamowite. Wow. After all these years, she can still speak, read, and she understands Russian. This is a very real thing, is what I'm trying to say. We've been occupied. We have had our identity stolen, suppressed. This is not a distant memory. It's history that actually lives in our homes, like with our grandmothers, grandfathers, who lived through the war. When the war ended, Poland didn't regain full freedom. What followed was decades of communism. Communism ended in 1989, which isn't that long ago at all. I was born in communist Poland. I actually spoke a little bit about that in my previous Poland vlog. It's not that long ago. So again, we were kind of free, but we were not free. And for me, it's just not distant memory. I remember certain things from that era. I know from having conversations with my mom, my grandma, that my mother, when she was pregnant with me, she marched in one of those protests against communism. She and my father studied in Łódź. When she was pregnant with me, she marched in one of the protests against communism. But because she was pregnant, I think she fainted. So she decided that it's probably not a good idea and went back to the student hostel. But then my father decided to stay. Based on the stories that I've heard, my Nigerian father stayed and marched against communism in Poland. What I'm trying to say is like these stories are not far away from us. The Polish people who are currently in power, they are roughly my age, right, or older. They remember what it meant to be free, but not really. they have very similar experiences to mine, minus the Nigerian father marching, of course, but you know what I mean. Poland isn't Sweden. We have gone through a lot in not so recent history. We have had our freedom taken away in not so recent history. Poland will have very different attitude towards certain things, or even just the attitudes of Polish people being a lot less open, a lot less friendly. Like it's not like they are not friendly, they are, but like it takes time for a Polish person to open up to you. We don't call somebody a friend easily. It takes time. You can be an acquaintance, but that doesn't mean you are a friend. Like it can take a long time for people to open up in Poland. And part of the reason is the fact that we have kind of gone through a lot of things. Yeah, and culture, identity, those things are very important to an average Polish person. Poland is not England. We don't have the same way of expressing ourselves. We are a lot more blunt, generally, a lot more direct in our communications. Once you have that context, I feel like it's a little bit easier to understand the country, as well as Polish people. And of course, I understand that the young people are different. Anyway, just to again highlight how not far away some of these things are. Here is me at school performing with other girls with PZPR, Polish United Workers' Party, above our heads. That was during the communist era, where whatever you did, your creation and everything, it was all censored. Like you couldn't say certain things, you couldn't do certain things. There was no freedom. We were kind of free, but not really. In conclusion, I want to address the Polish identity, which is being protected so much by the Polish people. As a young child, we were taught poems like Kto ty jesteś, Polak mały? It's a poem I still remember till today, which is so crazy. You might want to say that it's a nursery rhyme, but it's so patriotic. And now when I look back at it, I'm like, wow, is it not a bit much for a child? Because you learn that poem pre-school. And I can still remember the poem, and it goes like: Kto ty jesteś, Polak mały? Jaki znak twój, orzeł biały? Gdzie ty mieszkasz między swemi? W jakiej ziemi? Polskiej ziemi. Czym ta ziemia? Mą ojczyzną. Czym zdobyta? Krwią i blizną. Czy ją kochasz? Kocham szczerze. W co ty wierzysz? W Polskę wierzę. I'm laughing because I remember how we were taught to project our voices when we're saying certain things, like w Polskę wierzę, which means I believe in Poland. I still remember it today. A little poem that I learned at preschool. I've translated it here so you can see what it means, but it's essentially a very patriotic poem. Maybe a little extra, but that's not the only thing. I can still remember the Polish anthem. Jeszcze Polska nie zginęła, póki my żyjemy. Co nam obca przemoc wzięła, szablą odbierzemy. Dum, 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 dum. You know what? I know I'm a really bad singer, but you have to understand how we are almost programmed from a young child to love the country, to respect the country. It is illegal to desecrate the Polish flag in Poland. Some of the things that you see in England, people jumping on the flag, stepping on it, it's like burning it. You will go to jail if you do that to the Polish flag in Poland. You cannot do that. And I don't think it's a bad thing. You have to respect the country you come from. Poland is not perfect, I'm not saying it is, but I think it's important to maintain a national identity. While this isn't all there is, if you watch this channel, I'm all for being a global citizen, right? But I still respect Poland because it's the country that gave birth to me and taught me to respect it. In conclusion, Polishness is not something that's abstract, but it's something that's very deep for most Polish people. It's something that you are taught from a very young age. It's ingrained in you. Like, for me to still remember that poem, it blows my mind, really. I keep saying that I'm going to conclude and I don't. To conclude, I am mixed race, I am Polish. And I'm saying this because many people, mixed race people especially, because our idea of identity is a little bit more complex than monoracial people's idea of what identity is, right? Sometimes when I speak to my mixed race friends, they're like, how can you really believe that you are Polish? You are mixed race before you are Polish. But I will say, no, not really. Like, the two don't exclude each other. My mother was Polish, so through ancestry, through education, through programming, if you want to call it that, I am Polish. I am both. And I don't receive Poland as a racist country. Is Poland perfect? No, it isn't. No country is. Is there no racism in Poland at all? Of course not. But Poland is not more racist than other European countries. Let's just say that. And maybe less than many. Again, Polish people can be more blunt because that's just how they are. Can take more time to warm up to you, regardless of your skin color. And it is less versed in having these conversations about race, about culture. So sometimes they may say certain things that will be considered blunders. Poland is an interesting case, and I feel like understanding the people will probably help you see what I see a little bit more.